All right. Okay. Hello, children. You're joining me in my little room here on the oil platform for some more reading. Tonight I wanted to read you one of my favorite books when I was a kid. This is kind of a dangerous book. My daddy read me this book called My Side of the Mountain by, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Jean Craighead George or Jean Craighead George, possibly. Either way, he's an American guy from New York. And when he was a little boy, him and his dad loved to go out in the woods and fish and make tools and look at birds and animals and just go exploring and have a great time. And he wrote this book about running away to live in the woods and to live off the land. And I remember my dad read me this book when I was probably 6 or 7 years old. And it was probably the same year that I first decided I wanted to run away and live in the woods, which I did for about a day. And then I was hungry and it was getting dark and I wanted to come home. And I remember getting frustrated, being in a small house with a big family, lots of little kids, being the only boy really at the time because my little brother was just a baby. So I was just sick and tired of being indoors, I guess. So I had already built a little play fort back in the trees in the woods behind the little house that we lived in Lake Valley, North Carolina. And I took off. I grabbed some snacks and I went back into the woods and I thought I was just going to live there forever and I was going to hunt and eat fish from the pond and do whatever I had to do and not live indoors anymore. Bet you didn't know that about your daddy. My dad came to visit me at my fort and told me that that's what I wanted to do. Then, that was my choice. And then if I decided I wanted to come home, which I was sure I never would, that would be an option. So after sitting out in the woods all day long by myself and being hungry and not catching any fish and going to the gas station and shoplifting some Hostess cakes, I decided that it was time for me to go home. But anyway, this is a wonderful book, and I hope you enjoy it. I'll read maybe a chapter or two tonight. We'll go for maybe 10 or 15 minutes probably, and then do another video tomorrow night. So enjoy. Let's see here. Oh, there's some pictures. It's a map of my side of the mountain, signed by S. Gribley, who's the main character of this book. I'm sure we'll refer to this some more later. I hope that comes out nicely. If not, maybe I can take a photo and insert it into the video later. Maybe I can figure out how to do that. Okay. First chapter, in which I hole up in a snowstorm. To hole up means basically get stuck. I am on my mountain in a tree home that people have passed without ever knowing that I am here. The house is a hemlock tree 6 feet in diameter and must be as old as the mountain itself. 6 feet in diameter is pretty big. That's bigger than I can reach my arms apart. It's pretty big. It's almost as big as the trees that we went into in the redwood forest. Those are probably closer to 8 feet across, but they're big enough for you to squeeze into, and a couple of us squeeze into. I came upon it last summer and dug and burned it out until I made a snug cave in the tree that I now call home. My bed is on the right as you enter and is made of ash slats and covered with deerskin. Ash is a tree, by the way, not wood. Ash from burning wood. On the left is a small fireplace about knee high. It is of clay and stones. It has a chimney that leads the smoke out through a knot hole. I chipped out 3 other knot holes to let fresh air in. The air coming in is bitter cold. It must be below 0 outside. That is really cold. And yet I can sit here inside my tree and write with bare hands. The fire is small too. It doesn't take much fire to warm this tree room. It is the 4th of December, I think. It may be the 5th. That's almost Daddy's birthday. I'm not sure because I have not recently counted the notches in the aspen pole that is my calendar. I have just been too busy gathering nuts and berries, smoking venison, fish, and small game to keep up with the exact date. Venison is what you call deer after it's been cooked. The lamp I am writing by is deer fat poured into a turtle shell with a strip of my old city trousers for a wick. It snowed all day yesterday and today. I have not been outside since the storm began, and I am bored for the first time since I ran away from home 8 months ago to live on the land. I am well and healthy. The food is good. Sometimes I eat turtle soup, and I know how to make acorn pancakes. I keep my supplies in the wall of the tree in wooden pockets that I chopped myself. Every time I looked at those pockets during the last 2 days, I have felt just like a squirrel. Which reminds me, I didn't see a squirrel one whole day before the storm began. I guess they are holed up and eating their stored nuts too. I wonder if the Baron, that's the wild weasel who lives behind the big boulder to the north of my tree, is also denned up. Well, anyway, I think the storm is dying down because the tree is not crying so much. When the wind blows, when the wind really blows, the whole tree moans right down to the roots, which is where I am. Tomorrow I hope the Baron and I can tunnel out into the sunlight. I wonder if I should dig the snow. But that would mean I would have to put it somewhere. And the only place to put it is in my nice snug tree. So he's in his tree and it snowed so much that the snow is above the entrance to his tree house, his little entrance into the tree trunk. So he doesn't know how deep the snow is, but he knows it's higher than his door. So if he has to dig it all out, where's he going to put the snow? Maybe I can pack it with my hands as I go. I've always dug into snow from the top and never up from under. The Baron must dig up from under the snow. I wonder where he puts it when he digs. Well, I guess I'll know in the morning. When I wrote that last winter, I was scared and thought maybe I'd never get out of my tree. I was scared, and I had been scared for 2 days, ever since the first blizzard hit the Catskill Mountains. when I came up to the sunlight, which I did by simply poking my head into the soft snow and standing up. I laughed at my dark fears. Everything was white, clean, shining, and beautiful. There's an alarm that goes off a lot out here. So sorry, we'll just have to ignore it. The sky was blue, blue, blue. The hemlock grove was laced with snow, the meadow was smooth and white, and the gorge was sparkling with ice. It was so beautiful and peaceful that I laughed out loud. I guess I laughed because my first snowstorm was over and it had not been so terrible after all. Then I shouted, "I did it!" My voice never got very far. It was hushed by the tons of snow. I looked for signs from the Baron Weasel. His footsteps were all over the boulder, also slides where he had played. He must have been up for hours enjoying the new snow. Inspired by his fun, I poked my head into my tree and whistled. Frightful, my trained falcon flew to my fist, and we jumped and slid down the mountain, making big holes and trenches as we went. It was good to be whistling and carefree again, because I was sure scared by the coming of that storm. Here's a picture. I hope you can see. It shows Sam and Frightful coming out of their tree home, and you can see the Baron in the front and his little paw prints. You see again? I had been working since May, learning how to make a fire with flint and steel, finding what plants I could eat and how to trap animals and catch fish. All this so that when the curtain of blizzard struck the Catskills, I could crawl inside my tree and be comfortably warm and have plenty to eat. During the summer and fall, I had thought about the coming of winter. However, on that third day of December, when the sky blackened, the temperature dropped, and the first flakes swirled around me, I must admit that I wanted to run back to New York. Even the first night I spent out in the woods when I couldn't get the fire started was not as frightening as the snowstorm that gathered behind the gorge and mushroomed up over my mountain. Thought about the coming of winter. However, on the third day of December, when the sky blackened, the temperature dropped and the first flakes swirled around me, I must admit that I wanted to run back to New York. Even the first night I spent out in the woods when I couldn't get the fire started was not as frightening as the snowstorm that gathered behind the gorge and mushroomed up over my mountain. I was smoking 3 trout. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. I was busy keeping the flames low so they would not leap up and burn the fish. As I worked, it occurred to me that it was awfully dark for that hour of the morning. Frightful was leashed to her tree stub. She seemed restless and pulled at her tethers. Then I realized that the forest was dead quiet. Even the woodpeckers that had been tapping around me all morning were silent. The squirrels were nowhere to be seen. The juncos and chickadees and nuthatches were gone. I looked to see what the Baron Weasel was doing. He was not around. I looked up. From my tree you can see the gorge beyond the meadow. White water pours between the black, wet boulders and cascades into the valley below. The water that day was as dark as the rocks. Only the sound told me that it was still falling. Above the darkness stood another darkness, the clouds of winter, black and fearsome. They looked as wild as the winds that were bringing them. I grew sick with fright. I knew I had enough food. I knew everything was going to be perfectly all right. But knowing that didn't help. I was scared. I stamped out the fire and pocketed the fish. I tried to whistle for Frightful, but couldn't purse my shaking lips tight enough to get anything out but a. So I grabbed her by the hide straps that are attached to her legs, and we dove through the deerskin door into my room in the tree. I put Frightful on the bedpost and curled up in a ball on the bed. I thought about New York and the noise and the lights and how a snowstorm always seemed very friendly there. I thought about our apartment too. At that moment it seemed bright and lighted and warm. I had to keep saying to myself, there were 11 of us in it. 11 of us! That's a lot of people for one apartment. Dad, mother, 4 sisters, 4 brothers, and me. And not one of us liked it, except perhaps little Nina, who was too young to know. Dad didn't like it even a little bit. He had been a sailor once. But when I was born, he gave up the sea and worked on the docks in New York. Dad didn't like the land, he liked the sea. Wet and big and endless. Sometimes he would tell me about great-grandfather Gribley, who owned land in the Catskill Mountains and felled trees and built a home and plowed the land, only to discover that he wanted to be a sailor. The farm failed, and great-grandfather Gribley went to sea. As I lay with my face buried in the sweet, greasy smell of my deerskin, I could hear Dad's voice saying, that land is still in the family's name, somewhere in the Catskills. It is an old beech, which is a kind of tree, a beech tree, with the name Gribley carved on it. It marks the northern boundary of Gribley's Folly. The land is no place for a Gribley. The land is no place for a Gribley, I said. The land is no place for a Gribley. Yet here I am, 300 feet from the beach with Gribley carved on it. I fell asleep at that point, and when I awoke I was hungry. I cracked some walnuts. I got down the acorn flour I had pounded with a bit of ash to remove the bite. Reached out of the door for a little snow and stirred up some acorn pancakes. I cooked them on top of a tin can, and as I ate them, smothered with blueberry jam, I knew that the land was just the place for a Gribley. That's the end of the first chapter. How long have we been reading? I'm going to check. So I got to pull down the camera and find out. How do you like it so far? Hope you're having fun. I am. Okay, let's see here. All right, we've only been reading for 5 minutes. That's not very much time at all. This is going by pretty quick. So I'm going to read another little chapter. Let's see. Hey guys, so I have to interrupt because my phone played a little trick on me. I checked to see how long the video was. I thought it said it had only been like 5 minutes long, but it was actually like 15 minutes long. So we're gonna stop right here, and we'll pick it up again in another video. I don't want to make these videos too long because I don't want you guys, staying up all night. So good night. I love you, and we'll start up the next chapter in the next video. The next chapter is called "In Which I Get Started on This Venture." So looking forward to that. Good night. I love you. I also have to go back and read because part of it got cut off. So I'll record it now and then put it in somewhere else later.